Hello to everyone. Welcome. I just want to thank you for coming for our webinar in the part of ZEVinnovation project. ZEVinnovation project is dealing, full name of the ZEVinnovation project is strengthening transnational cooperation, knowledge and technology transfer in development of electric vessels and fostering innovation in SME. This webinar is a part of series of webinars in the field of financing intellectual properties, developing of the projects. This is the second webinar. We are planning to organize additional webinars in the next few months. So this is the outlook of the presentation. So we'll have I will explain a little about project program, about project partners, about company, Center of Technology Transfer, project aim and potential, plenary session about people who will present, and what we want to present in our webinar. So about the project and the program. ZEVinnovation project is funded by Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway through the EEA and Norway fund for regional cooperation. ZEVinnovation project benefited from 1.6 million euro grants, and the priority of the fund is innovation, research, education and competitiveness. So in this project, we are trying to combine all of this. We are working with innovation, we are helping the companies, we are working with researchers, and we are trying to help the companies to enter the new markets and to develop new products. Fund recognize regional cross-border and transnational cooperation as a key driver to find shared solutions. So that is the reason for funding project like this. Cooperation between different countries, different stakeholders, different partners is very important to reach goals set in 2030 or 2050, which are very high regarding the reduction of emissions in the waterborne transport. When we started the project, there were over 700 applications. And at the end, 20 projects selected, one lead partner from Croatia. This is the Center of Technology Transfer, and ZEVinnovation project is selected to be funded in the EEA and Norway grants fund. Project duration is 43 months. We started in July 2020 and we are ending in January 24. First 6 months is used to be spent for the analyzing the system, state for the art. Now this year is for the development of the platform, and next year we are starting communication between partners and potential stakeholders for development of the new products, new patents, and for the marketing of the different products. We have 5 partners from Croatia, Poland, and Norway. So Center of Technology Transfer is a lead partner. We have 2 beneficiary partners from the Poland and Croatia, Baltic Sea and Space Cluster, Innovacije I Razvoj, development and innovation and development on English. And we have 2 expertise partners, OKP and Vinko, coming from the Norway. Few words about CTT. CTT is founded in '96 by the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture. FSB, the short name, is the 100% owner of the CTT, but we are a private company. We are not part of the FSB, and we are not like a research organization, but a small and medium enterprise. Strategic purpose of the company is to connect science and economy, enhancing the competitiveness of Croatian industry, to strengthen the role of the UNIZAG FSB in this process, and to be place for the innovation and technology transfer, to connect people, laboratories, professors from the faculty with industry in Croatia and on worldwide level. Our main activities are transfer of knowledge into economy through different projects, research projects, small consulting projects, and lifelong learning projects and programs. We are organizing several different workshops, conference during the year about specific fields linked with employees on the faculty. We also have incubation acceleration of entrepreneur ideas. We have incubator and incubator. We have 15 companies. We also have the student incubator, which is a very good opportunity for the students to learn how to start the company, how to work on the market, and for how to find or raise the money for the future work. So now switching to the project aim and potential. As I said at the beginning, zero emission vessels, we are focusing on the zero emission electric vessels. That is our main focus. And in order to reach this transition to the zero emission vessels, we are working on the transnational collaboration. We are offering tailored expertise, commercialization, best practice, and everything is linked through our innovation hub. Innovation Hub is now in the process of development, the place where we will select companies to offer tailored expertise. Our tailored expertise are in the technical field, in the business field, and in the field of innovation. So when a company approaches to us, we can offer 3 different expertise for them and help them to reach a final goal, to develop project, to patent the project, and to enter on the different markets, in this case, Croatia, Poland, and Norway. So our plenary session is dealing with the creation and implementation of IPR in SMEs and university. Intellectual property is very important for not just for SMEs, but also on universities, because a lot of projects are implemented on the universities, and sometimes they required to have intellectual property or patents at the end of the project, and it is a difficult process, and sometimes people don't know, and they don't know who to ask, how to help them, and to develop IP. Key lessons in developing an intellectual property strategy: maintaining secrecy and aim to be the first on the market. Why secrecy and why first on the market? Secrecy, it's very, very good to have to developing new products, but if you present something, then you have the problem with developing of your patents, and that's why you have the secrecy. Everything is closed and you're trying to develop your patent. First to the market, meaning that you will be on the market first and you will earn money and cover costs for your patents. These are additional key elements, key lessons for the intellectual property strategy. I will not go in the details. You will have a presentation, you can read it. But the main goal of our plenary session is to explore organization of intellectual property strategies, how to develop strategy, how to protect your strategy, what you need to work and what you need to have before you start with your strategy. And in this plenary session, we will have 5 presentations. First presentation is coming from the Vinko and from Norway. Barbara will present, Barbara Salopek, Introduction to IPR and Most Important Learning. Second presentation is Emma Blake, Connected Consulting and the part of OKP through IPA, Intellectual Property Rights in Collaboration project. Then is coming Domagoj from Mreža Znanja with IP Management in Open Innovation, and Marek from Baltic Sea and Space Cluster as the last presentation. So this is my introduction to webinar. We will have 50 minutes presentation, 5 minutes question. 1 or 2 questions will be answered after each presentation, and in case that we have more questions at the end of the last presentation, all questions will be answered. Also, you can send email to our presenters or to me if you have additional question, and we will work and try to answer on all of your questions. So this is from me. I will stop sharing now. Barbara, floor is yours. You can start with your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Boris, for this very nice introduction, and I'm really happy to be here. and to have the opportunity to share some of my thoughts when it comes to IPR. Just a second. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So good day, everyone. It's very nice to get the opportunity to be here and to share my thoughts. As you all know, my topic is Introduction to IPR, and most important learnings I got through my experience by working with innovation. Here is the little bit of the agenda for my 15 minutes or maybe 20. I will have just a little bit of introduction, who we are, a little bit about IPR, and then practical learnings, and then sum up, and thank you, and Q&A session. So as Boris said, we are, I am getting chats. Let's check it. Okay, that was Boris.
It's me.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, we are expertise partner in this project, and we are very happy about that and honored to have this opportunity. ZEVinnovation is a company I'm the CEO and owner, which was started at the end of 2016. Our know-how or our core competences is innovation, how to manage innovation, how to implement innovation projects, and everything surrounding innovation as a term, getting the innovation culture in the company and similar. And here we come with know-how on commercialization, how to get technologies out to the market, and also how to collect ideas and develop them through the commercialization or innovation tube. So this was very shortly. And we are 3 in the team working on this project, Trond and Malene as well. Yeah, so IPR. Well, I got just 15 minutes, so I will just go only like on the surface about the IPR. Well, if someone of you is interested in a more specific topic, just please give feedback either to me or Boris, and then we will try to go into some specific topics that you are interested in, that are more focused on some issue. IPR, it's abbreviation for intellectual property rights. It means this is a group of legal rights associated with patents, trademark, and copyrights. In other words, not only patents. And what is important about this is that these rights give a holder right to exclude others from making, selling, or distributing the protected asset. It doesn't give the right of ownership. It gives the right of exclusion of others to making a profit of something that you have invented. There are temporary rights when it comes to IP patents, then it's 20 years. And it's very good to check how much left you have. For example, when you are going to commercialize something, and you talk to the business partner, they will always ask you how much is left of your patent, especially, for example, in a high volatile industry like medical drugs. So as I said, they don't convey ownership, they exclude others for making profit from commercializing the same invention that you have made. Yeah, so why intellectual property protection is important, and it has incentives grounded in 3 pillars, and those are to invent. What does this mean? It means that it gives the inventor the temporary monopoly to produce the invention. And during this period, it excludes others, and so it has the freedom to exploit and to make money. But by letting others, then this incentive would not exist, because if others can do what I'm doing, then I would just not be having incentive to exploit the possibility to earn the money. Also to disclose, this is something also that Boris has mentioned. Once you have filed the patent, you can speak about it. You don't have to have it as a secret anymore. And then you can talk to the business partners, you can talk to the others, you can present it on conferences, you can publish it. So it's much easier. You don't have to be afraid that someone will steal it, because it is out there, it is public, and everyone can see, but they cannot exploit it in the same way you can. And of course, to commercialize. It gives you incentive to commercialize it, to talk to the business partners, to the manufacturers, and they invest into, for example, a factory or a manufacturing plan without having a fear that someone else will do that faster and that someone else will pose threats to their investments made in, for example, manufacturing plant. So these are the three main pillars why it's that stand behind the IPR logic. However, of course, there is always disputes and there is always like critics, and there are also some disincentives to IP protection. First one is that they say that it hurts customers and users because, as I said, they create monopolies, and we know that monopolies mean higher prices. And of course, patents cost, and they're also included in the end price of the product. So that's why we get higher prices. They also say that the patent will not realize its full profit potential, because it will, in a way, stop others for doing the same thing. And also they say that the original inventor often does not enjoy the biggest financial rewards from the commercialization. And of course, it affects the direction of research, because, you know, if you have someone that is doing something similar, they will try not to infringe your patent, but maybe go in another direction. However, despite all those arguments, the general consensus is that the benefits to the society are greater than those disadvantages. So when we look at the IP pyramid, we can see that the trade secrets are the base for all the intellectual property rights. And the higher we go, the stronger protection we have. And as you can see on the top, the patents, they gave the strongest protection. There are three types of patents: utility, design, and plan. But also there is a new type, business model, that has been since 1904 also started gaining attention, and more patents filed in this on this type. Utility, it protects the functional part, design, visual, ornament characteristics, and the business model, abstract ideas could be patented. And I think it's very important to mention business method patents, because they, first of all, they are growing, and they are also growing in the share. They are holding 5 to 15% of the total patents applied. And here you can see how they have been growing since over the time in US. So it's 15% yearly growth. So it's definitely something that also have to keep in mind when applying for a patent. So if you have very good business method, it can also be patented, but so that means that you don't only have to have a utility or design, but also if you have a good business method, you have also a case. Yes. Okay, here is just a little bit of glimpse to have a sense how the biggest companies, how much they patent. And you know, the biggest companies are really investing to like they're mining their IP portfolio, because they are trying to make it so big, so complicated, so complex that no one else can go into the same area. This way they're trying to protect. And if, as you can see, IBM in 2019, they are the most, in US, they have been the company that has patented or get the most patents. And they have had more than 9,000 patents in 2019. I took here data for Norway in 2017. You see this number is much smaller. I assume for Croatia will also be much smaller than for IBM. However, we can also argue why Norwegian number or Croatian number is smaller, because maybe they have chosen the companies not to patent first in Norway, but in other countries that are much more important markets than home market. So that can be the reason. But however, IBM with 300, almost 400 employees is really producing significant amount of patents, and also it's Of course, patents are costly, but it's very interesting to keep in mind a patent as a strategy, patent portfolio, and what do you want to achieve with that and in which direction you want to go. When it comes to the areas, they're patented mostly in the cloud computing, analytics, mobile, social, and security. And I'm sure that also zero-emission vessels have a lot of potential for lots of patents, actually. Yes. Yeah, so this was very short about IPR. And as I said, if there is anything specific you want to know, just please say to Boris or to me, send us an email. And we can also discuss if you want to make a plenary session on something more specific. So I have been working with innovation for more than 15 years, and I have been leading the projects where we have, where I also was in charge of managing the patent strategy. And I try to summarize some of my learnings. I'm a business person. I'm not a lawyer or a jurist, but I'm looking at it from the business perspective. Yeah, so here are some of the most learnings, which I will explain. First of all, patents are very expensive. I hear many people, private persons and also CEOs, they say, okay, we will just file a patent. But before you do that, you have to be very aware why you are doing it, because it's very easy to file a patent. First year is not very costly. Like total cost for the first year are assumed, for example, in Norway, 50,000 Norwegian crowns or 50,000 euros, all the costs. In US, only application is, if I remember well, it's around 300 pounds. So the first year is not an issue. An issue is what happens afterwards. You see on the left, it's a very complicated process. You also, if you want to go international to PCT phase, you have to decide in which countries you will go, and the whole process then repeats everything repeats for every country you go in. So you have application fees, which you do when you apply for the patent, and then you have maintenance fees. In US, that's 3 times during these 20 years you paid, but in the rest of the world, you have to pay maintenance fees every year. And the more countries you go, it doubles only by and it doesn't make sense to put the patent in your home country and then you don't have money to go into other countries, which are actually where you have production, your competitors, or very important market for you. So it's important to think before you rush into the into patent application process. And of course, if you miss any deadline, your patent lapse. You don't have patent anymore. You missed it. So, and remember, innovations are much more easier to patent than to commercialize. Yeah. So where should you start from? You know, you really are interested to file a patent, but you think you have a very good idea. So the first thing I would suggest to do is like try to do a search for similar patents. If you're a technical person, you can go to WIPO pages. Also, I think Google has Google Patents database, which you can search, and then you will get a little bit of feeling what's out there in the market. Also, you can ask a specialized company to provide you a very detailed report about patents in the field, who are the companies who are patenting in this field, and what are their patents about. This is, of course, very costly, but also here in Norway, we have a very good opportunity to go to the patent office and to ask them to do the patent search. And this is not expensive. I assume something similar is also possible in Croatia and other countries. So ask for the patent search. You will get a report on utility, novelty, and non-obvious. And those are the 3 criteria also that each patent application is evaluated. Does it have a use? Is it a novel? And is it non-obvious for a person in the field, for the expert in the field? And then you will get also a little bit of sense of where you stand in relation to the other patents, how strong your patent is, and then you can evaluate your patent strategy again. So this is something that I would advise to go first. Yeah, and if you go to the patent lawyers, of course, they will always say that that you can patent. Everything can be patented. It is about how strong patent you will get at the end. If you get a weak patent, big companies will know that, and they will know that you are not a threat. So it's important to really think about it. Do you want to go or not? As I said in the beginning, it's very easy to patent, but it's much more difficult to create a business case, to commercialize the invention. Yeah. So Boris mentions briefly disclosing. Yes. When you apply for a patent, it cannot be publicly available before. So you are not allowed to disclose it. If you disclose it, everyone you disclose it should sign NDA, non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality agreement. So they are obliged to not to talk about it. So it's still a secret. Very often, and I had a case, very brilliant idea that was really good, novel, and market potential was big, but the person has disclosed this idea on a conference. This is like about, if you disclose it on the conference, in the paper, newspapers, articles, scientific articles, posters on the conferences, everything counts. So be careful. You can, if you have a legal person who knows patent law, you can always ask, is it okay if I frame the sentence like this? Will it disclose something that will inhibit me from patenting later? So it's very good to have good communication with someone who knows those things. And then they can give you advice how to frame your posters, how to frame a paragraph in the scientific article, so that you both can publish and also can patent. So this is very important to keep in mind. The trick with the patenting a process, I had two cases where there was a researcher who came and she wanted to patent her process because it gave us end result that gave her benefits. And when we talked about it, it ends up that it's very easy for a manufacturing process to be worked around by competitors. So you should very much evaluate it. Is this something that a competitor or someone else will work around very easily or not? And the order to discuss to actually pursue patent. Just yesterday, I talked with my recent colleagues, and they said that they decided actually not to patent. It's equal okay to keep something as a secret and not to patent. So just keep that a little bit in mind. Okay, but let's say that everything is okay and you pursue a patent, you apply for a patent, and you get it after a while. And then, like, you might think, am I safe? Is it finished? Is my work done? No. When you patent something, you either patent it as a company to manufacture, to exploit it within your own company, for example, startup, or you will license it out. It was case here where there was a startup company that patented, and then the startup company was bought by a fund, and then the fund was bought by a bigger fund. And so, like, through several of these stages, they lost control over the patent. They didn't follow up the patent maintenance fees. And then it was really good technology and something that is really in right now, and it has a potential. However, the patent lapsed because they didn't follow up. So if you are a startup and you will be having, you will have emission of the shares, and especially if those are institutions, venture capitalists, be sure that you follow the patent lifespan, that you have control over all obligations and maintenance fees that have to be paid. It's very easy to be forgotten. It happens. So this is something that you have to take care of. So, and the last also, as I said, either you have a startup or you want to license it out. As I said, there is no use of patent if you don't make business out of it. It doesn't make sense just to keep it so that you can say that you have patented, it's important to make a business case. So it's very common to license it out. This is also very comprehensive topic. It's not straightforward process. You have to think whether you will have an exclusive, non-exclusive license. Will those licenses be exclusive or non-exclusive for an industry or for the market or different things? So you will have to go and reach to the potential business partners. I was working with a case where we decided to have a project where we test, does everything works. We will get the same results as the patent shows. And then if we do, then we go to full license project, like that we license out the whole idea to that company. So when you decide for the licensing, it is possible to have like those for project licenses where you test if it works. And this is very good because then you also establish a cooperation with a business partner. You get to know each other. You can see if this partner is equally serious about it as you are. Then you will see, can you trust this partner? And then you can decide afterwards, if everything goes well, like how you will actually license out this technology. So so these are some of my learnings to what I learned so far in my career. To sum it up, as I said, patents are costly. Don't forget about that. First year can seem very cheap, but afterwards costs just pile up, accumulate. Have a clear commercialization strategy. What is the aim of your patent? I will give you an example of mousetrap. Mousetrap is the most patented item in US patent history. More than 4,500 patents are patented on a mousetrap in US. More than 400 every year, but only one makes money. So you don't want to have 4,499 patents that are just useful and they are just like very costly. You want to have patents that really matter. And also the more original patents, like the patents that other patents will then reflect to and decide, the more innovative you will be as a company or as a country as well. This is the research what showed. As I said, use your local patent office to get the research reports on the technology. It will give you a good indication for the next steps. And also use the best patent lawyer in the field, not the one closest to you. Try to use the best who knows this field, because this patent lawyer will be able to give you the best advice. So this is all for me, and I'm open for your questions. As I said, feel free to also contact me on email, and yeah, looking for your questions.
So thank you, Barbara, very good presentation. This is very good introduction for our next presentation. I have one question. I hope that you will answer and help try to give answer on this. So in your past experience, where you received more patents or requests to help for the patents, from companies or from universities? And what is the percentage of commercialization? Where is the bigger commercialization, from the companies or from the universities, in your experience?
Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. Okay, first of all, I worked in a technology transfer as Boris is leading for almost 10 years. So that means most of the requirements for the patents come from the university, for the research institutions. If you talk about companies, I think that companies are more focused with their patents. They are more, they know the market better, and I think their patents, are much more to the spot, and that hence, businesses don't patent for just patenting; they patent for the business case they have. While universities are a little bit different, and it's like researchers and the research institutions connected to universities, their main goal is to research. They are not so focused on making a business case. They're focused on bringing new research to the life that will help the whole society. So it's very important for researchers also to understand that they get money from the society, from the taxpayers, and giving back this money is actually through making a business cases of their research. So it's actually two-way street. And like so often you get patents from university that you as a technology transfer have to create a business case or evaluate business case for the researcher, because the researcher is a researcher, and that's why you have technology transfer to make the bid, to evaluate it if there is or not. And I have been working with different industries, with the medical, with the oil and gas, and of course, like medical and the drugs, usually they go for the patents because they will be licensed out to the big pharma. Usually oil and gas technologies, they go on startups and also maybe licensing, but much more startups. So I hope, yeah, so all in all, it's important to have the business case, and then I says the researchers think about research, not so much about the patents, but companies are.
Okay, thank you. It's very good explanation, because as you said, now more and more research projects are coming at the universities, and requirements from in the research projects is patent. So now they are trying to push more patents, but as you said, it's not so easy to patent the idea, and at the end it's very expensive. So you need to have like a commercialization strategy for your patent. So Barbara, thank you. Thank you very much for this very good presentation. Our next presenter is Emma. Emma, she will continue. She will continue with intellectual properties. And Emma is our part of our projects, so she is subcontracted by OKP, and she will be in the project until the end, and she will also try to help our companies entering and asking for help in this sector. And she will now present in the next 50 minutes about intellectual property. So floor is yours, Emma.
Okay, thank you. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm originally from the UK, as you can hear, but I'm based in Norway and have been for the past 10 years. My background is that I was a intellectual property and commercial contract lawyer in the UK, and then have spent the last 10 years working for Rolls-Royce, Marine and Kongsberg as an IP manager. And the main parts of that role have focused on not only the protection of the IP rights that we have in patenting, etc., but also the commercialization of these rights and how we manage them through that commercialization process. And what I want to talk to you about today for the agenda is I want to look at collaboration agreements as a means of commercializing your IPR and your patented technology, because once you've secured those rights and you've protected them, the next question, as Barbara was saying, is to make sure that you commercialize them, that you get some return on your investment. And one of the main ways of doing this is through collaboration, through universities collaborating with companies to create an end product that can be then taken to market. And when you're working with collaboration agreements, you then face a lot of questions, and they can look very complex around who owns the background IPR, who owns the IPR that you're contributing to the project, and who will own the results. And a lot of the funded projects, for example, the EU project under Horizon 2020, the Norwegian research agreements, they have very fixed frameworks about what IP that you contribute and who owns the results. And so working your way around this quite complex framework to understand it and understand not only what you want to contribute, what rights you want to give the others to access it, who owns the results and who has the rights to commercialise them, to sell the products, to develop it further, is a key part to the commercialisation process. So what I want to go through with you is a short overview really of definitions, what background IPR and foreground IPR is, how you can map and manage the background IPR that you're contributing to a project or a collaboration, and who owns the results, the ownership of foreground IPR, who owns it, what factors determine who owns it, and looking at what rights you need coming out of it. And then I want to have a quick look at joint ownership, which is usually suggested as a means of sharing the ownership of the results. So just quickly as an overview, and many of you may know this already, background IPR is any intellectual property rights, so patents, designs, copyright in software, etc., which are owned by the party prior to the date of the project, or they are developed by that party outside of the scope of the agreement. So that's really everything that you contribute or that you own before you sign the collaboration agreement or before you go into the collaboration. That's your background IPR, and your decision is as to, to what extent are you going to share that background IPR? What exactly are you going to share with your collaboration partner? And so foreground IPR, which is, you will often find it called, defined as results in collaboration agreements, is any intellectual property which is created or developed by anybody as a result of the agreement. So anything that you create as a result of the collaboration, whether it's based on your background IPR or not, that will be called results and foreground IP. And that's the important part, is determining who owns that, who has the rights to commercialise it. And I want to look at why it's important to map and manage the background IPR that you contribute. One of the first things that I would recommend that people do before you enter a collaboration agreement, or when you're in initial discussions, is to actually sit down with your teams and say, okay, what is it that we will be sharing? What have we got? And creating a record of it. And the reasons why that's important is because you have to ensure that you have all the rights and the permissions to share that background IPR. There may be some cases where you have a product, or you've developed a product or a process, but it might contain IPR from other parties. For example, if you have a consultant who has developed some of the software for you, you need to make sure that you have an agreement in place with that consultant that says you own the IPR. Similar with open source software in a project. If you have open source software, you need to be aware of it, because anything developed based on the open source software will also be open source. So it's really ensuring that what you're going to share, you have the right to share it. In most cases, it will be technology and IPR which you've developed as a company and that you own. But you need to be aware that there are these other situations. You need to be able to identify any sensitive background IPR as well. For example, as Barbara mentioned, if you have something which you intend to apply it for a patent for, you need to keep that secret and confidential. You don't want to be sharing it in a large collaboration agreement before the date when you put the application in, because unless you have very tight regulations around confidentiality, you are at risk of publishing that potentially patentable technology before you put in the application. And the other reason why it's important to maintain a record of what you have developed and what you are contributing. It's very important that you understand who your collaboration partners are and what they are doing. For example, if you have two very similar companies who are competing in the same area, you may have developed the same technology or the same product independently from each other. And if you go into a collaboration agreement, you risk cross-contamination. If you've both got background IPR, which is essentially the same or similar, there arises the potential for a lot of conflict of one saying, hey, hang on, that was ours, we owned it, we shared it, and now you've developed something. And then the other party says, well, no, I had this originally. So in order to stop that kind of conflict arising, it's really good to have a record of what you're taking into the project with you. And the other factor is that the background IPR will, whoever owns that, the results will be based on that background IPR. And it's this, one of the factors is to decide who owns it is whose background IPR is it based on. So if you have a very clear record of what background IPR you've got and what you've taken with you, you have a very good argument as to, well, this is my background IPR, this is a development of it, I should own it. And it also demonstrates the parties' contributions to the projects, i.e. if the ownership is to be determined based on contributions, you've got a record. So this is what I'm going to share with you, and this is a very simple mapping tool, which is generally used in EU funding agreements. So you have different work packages and you can split it down by work package, and you can say, okay, for this work package, this is the IP that I will be providing or that we'll be looking at. Has it been developed by me, yes or no? Is it mine or a third party's? If it's owned, say if we take software as an example, is it owned by a third, is it developed by a third party? Yeah, it is. Do we have a license in place with that third party? Yeah, we do, but I've looked at it and it says that I can only share it with other parties for research and development purposes. Okay, so we know that we don't have permission to share it for commercialisation, that we need to be aware of. Is it sensitive, yes or no? So if we look at the next line, know-how in relation to well intervention cabling, yes, it is sensitive. I'm drafting the patent application. Okay, well, should we really be contributing that then? And so this kind of mapping, even though it's a simple spreadsheet and it can be quite a dull exercise, it is vital before you go into that collaboration situation. So I want to look at who owns foreground IPR and the results, and usually though in the frameworks, you'll see those regulatory frameworks in the research agreements and in collaboration agreements. It is determined on these four factors. Whose background IPR is it based on? If it's based on a combination of different people's background IPR, which is the most dominant and essential? So if you create something, is it based on, you know, so dominantly on one party's IPR that it couldn't be standalone? It wouldn't work without that background, that IPR from that party. So the other action is which party performs the development work. Anything created will usually belong to in the first place, the person that creates it, and then it is transferred to their employer. So whose employees have created it? Which party owns it? Who has facilitated the development? So which parties provided funding, facilities, specialist equipment or resources? Because they will want some share in the results in return for that investment. And which party is best placed to commercialise the results? Many of the parties that you'll meet in collaboration agreements and, you know, the universities here, they are very good. They are developing the IPR, the results. However, is the university best placed to commercialise it? It may not be in their interests. Similarly with research organisations, they don't have the expertise or the access to market to commercialise it. Therefore, they might want to share ownership of the results with a company that can do that. And so, again, you can use a very simple mapping tool, looking at each work package to say, okay, what background IP is party A provided and what are they doing? What are they doing? What are their actions as part of this collaboration? What is party B doing? And what are they doing? Who is likely to own the foreground IP that's been created? And so if we take parties A and B, one party is an OEM manufacturer of equipment. They are providing the performance data for their equipment, which they have collected, they have processed, they have analysed, they have made algorithms for, and then they are using party B is coming and contributing simulation software, and the result is a digital simulation of the equipment, a digital twin. So who's likely to own that? Well, party A is just providing data. Party B is providing the actual software that turns that data into something useful. Therefore, it's likely that party B will own the simulation. And that kind of exercise helps you determine what you're doing and who is likely to own the results. I want to take you through a little example here, and I'm sorry for the very technical people among you that I'm using a very simple example. I want to show you how two similar situations can give entirely different results when it comes to ownership. And in what I find it's useful to use is an analogy of a cake, because I'm trying to use it in a method where people can understand and relate to, and most people can relate to cake. So if we have party A, who is in the collaboration project, they've invested in the raw materials and they're providing the raw materials. They have a patented process when it comes to mixing the ingredients. They have a written recipe which has been handed down from grandma, and they have written it down and they own the copyright in that written recipe. And they've also designed a specific baking cake, a baking tin, which they have protected as a design. And they also have all the know-how in relation to how to make the eggs fluffier than usual. And they're going to share this, this background IP. This is what they're bringing to the table. They're going to work with party B, and party B is going to decorate the cake, and they're going to contribute their skills in decorating it and materials. So they're going to put some sprinkles on top. So there you've got a picture of the results. Now, who owns that cake? Who has the right to sell it and commercialise it? I would say it is party A, because they've provided the dominant background IP, they've done most of the work, they've provided they are the dominant owner. So they would have the right to sell it and decide who gets to eat the cake. But if you take the same situation, but you adjust what's happening and what the parties are doing, and you take this example, you can see that party A is providing the raw materials for the cake, the patented process, the written recipe, the know-how in how to make the eggs fluffy, and the cake form that's specifically designed. And they're just making a plain sponge cake. This time, party B is providing their raw materials for the decoration. They're using patented tools and technology to decorate it, and their own specialist know-how. And the result looks something very different. The result is a beautiful creation. Looking at that, you can say, okay, both parties have provided similar amounts of background IP. They've both provided raw materials, they've both provided patented technology, and they've both provided know-how. However, when you look at the results, the dominant result that is immediately looking at you, the immediate reason for commercialization and the success of that product is the decoration of the cake. The party A has provided a plain sponge cake, which has been made into something quite wonderful and unique by party B. So now this situation is different. It is going to be party B who should have the rights to own that cake and sell it and decide who eats it. So that's hopefully gives you an overview as to why it's important to understand what each party is contributing and what each party is doing. One of the solutions that you'll find, especially for that second example with the wedding cake, is that a lot of the frameworks you use in collaborations will say, okay, well, if the parties have both contributed a similar level of background IP and they've both contributed know-how and they've both, you know, it's about equal, contributions are about equal, we'll just joint own it. That's great. That's a great solution. It's not always the best solution. It can be quite fraught, it can bring its own difficulties, and it can be a high risk strategy. The key to joint ownership is knowing your partner. You don't want to be in a joint ownership situation with a competitor who has the same interests in the same markets as you. You want to know your partner, know what their interests are, know what their strengths and abilities are. If you're partnering a university partner with a company who can commercialise it, that generally works because you're not in a conflicting situation. You haven't got the same interests. So what are the pitfalls of deciding joint ownership? You can end up in disagreements on protection strategy. For example, if one party is based in Norway, one party is based in the US. Okay, I want to patent this in the US. No, our market's Norwegian company says no. Our main market's not in the US. Why do we want to patent it in the US? Why do we want to patent it in China? So you get disagreements on how to protect, whether they take out the patent, whether they publish it. A university would prefer to publish it. A private company would prefer to patent it. Who bears the cost of registration and maintenance? Barbara went through with you what those costs are and the maintenance duties, to obligations to maintain and pay fees. Who gets to decide and vote? If you're in a joint ownership with 50-50 shares, no one has a deciding vote on, you know, which way to go. Granting sublicense to third parties is a problem. If you are working with a party and they have the right to sublicense the technology freely to anybody, you could find yourself in a situation where they sublicense that technology to a competitor of yours. So you need to have control over the rights the other party is granting to use. And you need to understand what rights that you have to use those results as a joint owner. For example, can you only use it in the marine field, or can you use it in other industry sectors? And that's always key to understanding. So all these things you need to think about before you think, okay, joint ownership, great, this is a good solution. You need to step back and think about, okay, well, what about these issues? So when you have a joint ownership situation, these are the factors that you want to see in agreement. Which parties have what shares of ownership? As I said, 50-50 isn't always the best option. You need someone who has a controlling voice, and either you make that one of the parties, so one has 51%, or you say 49-49, and then you give a controlling share of 2% to a third party or a research institute or somebody that's been involved in the funding of the project, so that they understand the project, they know the research results, and they can help the parties decide if there is ever a dispute. Define which party decides on protection and publication. We've just said university will want to publish, a private company will want to protect. Who has the final say in which strategy you use? Which party registers and who bears the cost of the application? Who decides which countries to register it and maintain it in? Who is responsible for pursuing or defending any infringement actions? For example, if you're a joint owner with a university, they may not have the resources or the expertise to defend any IP infringement actions. They may not be interested in defending the action. They may say, okay, this is up to you. But you need agreement on who's going to take the responsibility for that. Conditions of exploitation, okay, so define areas of use, what purposes can I use it for? So party A can use it for research and development purposes. Party B can use it for commercialization and development of products. Defined areas, party A can use it in the following countries. Party B can use it in these countries, or you can split it by industry sectors. So one can use it in the field of marine technology, one can use it in the field of air transportation. Pre-agreed limitations on who you can sub-license to, so you don't find yourself in that situation where your collaboration partner has licensed it to a competitor. And royalties, if you do let the other party grant sub-licenses, you want to see some royalties out of this because you've had a role in developing it. And dispute resolution, if it all goes wrong, have you got an option to buy the other party out? How are you going to resolve any disputes? And so that's a basic overview of the concepts that you will come across if you find yourself in a collaboration agreement. And what I want to go away from is when people sometimes read the IP clauses in a collaboration agreement, they can get very intimidated because they're very long, they look complicated, but actually the concepts behind them it can be quite simple when you understand what they're asking and what they mean. So yeah, that's my input on collaboration agreements. So thank you very much for letting me talk, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Oh, thank you, Emma. It is a very good presentation, very detailed. I lost myself part E, part B. I will be part C, so I will go alone, not to join. But one quick question. How often do companies go with this joint ownership and sign all elements in the contract? So because I'm always back to Croatia, because now at the moment we have in last year or last 2 years we funded the universities and companies with almost 1 billion euros. Regarding the joint cooperation on development of new products. So this is something new for me, and always result is a patent. So research organization is researching, and then the company is entering in some part. So how often do they create correctly this joint ownership and things like that, from your experience?
From my experience, when I've seen it, where it usually arises is in that second kind of example where parties have got an equal contribution. I would recommend that it's something that you avoid if you can. If you can find other mechanisms of defining who will own the results, it is much better. For example, if you have a university that's developed patented technology, it's much easier if the university then owns the results of that development, and then they can later license it to another party to commercialize it, rather than having this joint ownership, because unless you understand the parties' interests and what you're going to do, it can be a very difficult situation. And usually it's only used in those situations where the parties have got similar input in the same field. They've provided similar amounts of background IP, and those elements of background IP are essential to the result. Both of them are essential. It's 50-50 based on each. So that's why you need to look at what is being created, who is creating it, what it's based on. And I would always advise against that joint ownership position.
Okay. So thank you. It's I see now it's very complicated. So I hope that people in the future, when they are applying for the projects, will know they know about this problem about joint ownership, because if you go with the two parties in the creating, you create a problem. So thank you very much. And I see now that you will be a big help to our partners and companies in the project. So thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
So our next presentation is from Domagoj. So Domagoj, floor is yours. You have experience also, and please share your knowledge.
Okay, thanks a lot, Boris. Well, good morning. Hello, everyone. My topic is intellectual property management in open innovation, and I think it will be a nice follow-up to what we have learned from Emma. So this is a brief outline. We'll start with briefly distinguishing open versus closed innovation, some rationales behind it, how to implement it, or through which mechanisms. And then the focal point of our presentation is managing knowledge in open innovation, in which some of the topics will slightly overlap with what we have heard from Emma, but also I'll put emphasis on some different aspects. So I think that it will be useful to all the participants. So we'll speak briefly about consortium agreements, also about joint ownership of intellectual property, and about knowledge transfer as a possible outcome of these processes. So at the beginning, since we don't have that much time, and this is not meant to be an academic presentation where we discuss the details of each model, but I think it is useful to briefly distinguish what has more or less been the traditional approach to innovation, a more linear way where everything starts with the science and technology base, where the results are enter some kind of a funnel in which companies commercialize the outcomes of research, and the end there is a market which absorbs the results through new products and services. Of course, in some cases, is the market which demands certain solutions, but more or less the process is linear, and all participants more or less stick to their quote unquote prescribed roles. You have RTOs, public research organizations, universities on the one hand. You have companies, including both larger ones and SMEs, few startups, and then you have customers which sort of await the results. But on the other hand, what we've seen over the last maybe 10 to 15 years is more attention being devoted to the open innovation model, in which each of these components and each of these assumptions is slightly relaxed, and more participants are introduced, and different steps are implemented in different ways. What do I mean? So any research that is being that takes place can come from within particular organizations or from some external sources. Once again, we have a kind of a funnel through which each organization processes what is known from its internal sources, and also what it needs also from the outside. So it insources certain technologies from the outside when needed. It out-licenses certain technologies when possible and when needed. It can also have technology spin-offs when in the case of projects which are not essential to one's business strategy. So having all that in mind, and without further explications, we can move on to open innovation. I mean, I think that the first thing that needs to be said is open doesn't mean free. Open usually means disclosed and with clear terms of access. So it simply means that companies and other participants in the research, development, and innovation processes develop better interfaces which enable them to cooperate efficiently. So usual motives are transparent. I mean, collaborators do that in order to shorten the time to innovate, to share risks, to reduce costs, and sometimes to get preferential access to markets. What is important is that knowledge and technologies which are in use in the case of open innovation are usually covered by several IP rights. So you have this nice metaphor of a recipe which belong to different owners, and which are mixed and matched in a particular way to produce some new knowledge. And of course, as we have learned, this foreground IPR then needs to be distributed and utilized in a particular manner. But another important point is that in this case, intellectual property is not viewed as a barrier, but rather, something which will enable you to prevent others from using it, but as an advantage, as an opportunity which enables you to develop your technologies further, or to commercialize it through different avenues, or to find the necessary bits and pieces for the development of your own technologies from external partners. Which mechanisms are used in open innovation? Of course, the major one is collaborative research, as we have also heard from Emma. Which can occur through projects, but also through joint ventures, through specific vehicles, new companies, new startups, which develop particular technologies. Also, contract research is also quite frequent. Here, we don't have that many problems with IPR, because it's clear who outsources what and who does what for whom. There are other mechanisms which which don't lead to many issues related to IPR, and which mostly revolve around expertise sharing. So it's publications, disclosing one's results or one's research is something that enables others to use it. Consultancy projects, industrial PhDs, something very important in many countries, and also, especially in recent years, networking and crowdsourcing, asking either a particular group of users or partners or communities to contribute in some specific cases to development of one's knowledge or one's technology. But at the end of the day, it is necessary, or it is very frequent, to license some IP rights as a means of exploitation and commercialization. In some cases, we have patent pooling, which is a case where two or more companies cross-license their patents related to a particular technology. So we can once again remember the example of this recipe, where you have something complementary and decide to form a package of IPR, which is then commercialized as something which may also involve joint ownership. And finally, academic spin-offs and startups is also one way through which open innovation is implemented. But it's not in the focus of our talk, so we'll move on. So this is a brief description of a process of managing knowledge in open innovation surroundings. We'll, in the next slides and the rest of the presentation, I'll go through these bits and pieces. So everything starts with knowledge management. It starts with knowing what you know and what you have, and protecting what you have. When entering different types of relationship with external partners, it's usually necessary to have some idea about confidentiality. I mean, knowing what you want to protect and what belongs to you and what you want to protect, and signing memorandums of understanding which deal with that. When it comes to specific collaboration projects or other similar mechanisms, you sign consortium agreements, which may or may not lead to joint ownership, and in the end of the process, they may lead to knowledge transfer. So knowledge management is important. I mean, setting up an internal filing system, tracking any creation of IP assets is something that organizations become more and more aware of, even if they're small, because their future competitiveness depends on it. It's important to document each IP element as a potential proof of ownership in any, either in the case of formal protection or in the case of further collaboration with someone. Creating and maintaining an IP database is something what organizations do when they develop their IP. Reviewing of the IP used, knowing what you actually use, what you have, what you may need in the future. The issue of confidentiality, both internal within the organization and external in collaboration with external partners, is important. And also being aware of third parties' IP rights, meaning securing freedom to operate and avoiding infringement of other partners or companies' IPR, which may lead to costly suits and so on, as you know. Consortium agreement defines the relationship between project partners, which means obligations between them, organization of the work, project management, meaning how the particular decisions are made within the project, and also management of the generated intellectual property, meaning this foreground IPR. Sometimes these consortium agreements are either prescribed or influenced by, for instance, specific public calls through which collaborative research is financed. I mean, something which is financed from Horizon or ERDF, often there are some conditions attached to some of these aspects. But when it comes to intellectual property, the issues to be covered include background IPR, meaning IP currently owned by the parties and necessary for project implementation, protection of IP generated within the project, allocation of ownership, and also access rights to the above for project implementation or exploitation purposes. So what we need to implement the project, and when you have specific outcomes and results, what do we do with them? How do we commercialize and exploit them? Once again, we go back to the issue of joint ownership of intellectual property. I would agree with Emma that it makes sense to avoid it unless there are good reasons to implement it, because of many uncertainties related to future exploitation. It is sometimes best to simply set things clear at the beginning to compensate one party in a particular way and leave the party which has the most, which has contributed most to the development and protection of the IPR of IP to commercialize it at its own risk. So this issue is relevant to any project involving co-development of intellectual property, and the issues which need to be addressed, as we have learned, include assignment of shares in IP, conditions of use, conditions of exploitation, IP protection and maintenance. I mean, who's responsible, who pays for it, how it's going to be done, IP monitoring, and also governing law, jurisdiction, or alternative dispute resolution systems which are to be implemented. And finally, if everything is successful, but the company or companies which developed particular IP are not interested or able to commercialize them on their own, they may resort to some form of knowledge transfer. That means, and it is important to state that transfer of technology and know-how between organizations is the essence of open innovation. That brings us back to some of the first points that I made. When the innovation is open, it means that we are able to define technology and know-how which is to be transferred from one party to another, and the essence of the commercial relationship that develops around it. So knowledge is, of course, usually transferred through contracts, either licensing or assignment contracts, and on the basis of some IP valuation. Of course, given the uncertainty of the innovation process, this valuation involves different risks related to commercialization. So when different parties are involved, it may mean that they have different ideas about how much particular IP may be worth, and if they give it up, what adequate compensation they should receive. But of course, that's something understandable given the context of innovation. So as we said, the contracts related to knowledge transfer are often licensing in or licensing out contracts, which in one case means that you acquire the right to use certain technology, or you give others such rights and specify what, how, for what period, under which conditions, and so on. But in many cases, owners of IP decide to sell or assign their IP either as a means of commercialization. Sometimes you see that you don't have a product, but you may have a particular know-how or particular elements which are useful to some other party, and you want to make some money or recoup your R&D costs through assignment. Or in some cases, it may be related to divestment of IP assets which are not crucial to one's business strategy. Simply getting rid of what you don't need and getting something out of it. And of course, when it comes to startups, IP is often the main driver of their value. So when we have rounds of financing, when we have acquisitions and takeovers, quite often it's not the actual products or profits which form the most of the value of such startups. It's the IP that they have developed, the technologies which are useful to perhaps, for instance, to larger companies with stronger marketing capability and production capability, which may be able to make much more money out of it, if we want to put it that way. So this is basically what I wanted to share with you. So I'm of course open to any questions that you might have. So thanks a lot for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Domagoj. Again, very nice presentation. And I received one question. Do you have practical examples to present with details on academic spin-offs and startups, process, ownership, successful rates, areas of work, etc.? So did you work on something like that? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, I mean, I helped but more in an informal capacity in some of such cases, and since I mean, as you know, coming from Croatia on the one hand, and since I lived and worked in the UK for a while and worked in some other countries, you see different experiences, and you see that it's quite rare to find success stories. And I mean, there are different ways to fail. But there are of course different ways to succeed. But it would probably require another, at least, presentation of this size to go through such an example. And I remember one case, because there are very few universities, for instance, which make money out of their spin-offs or intellectual property in general. But even smaller universities, I remember, I think it was at Vermont or somewhere in northeastern US. It was during a conference of University Industry Innovation Network in London a few years ago. They showed how they managed to find different avenues to commercialize their brand in the local community. Sometimes you have to involve yourself in unconventional ways of leveraging what you have. For instance, I think they had beer, which they co-branded with the local brewery, and a few other examples like that. So it may not always mean high tech and great knowledge protected by some fancy patents. It sometimes means knowing what you have and finding an appropriate partner to commercialize it. So either through licensing, as in such case, or sometimes as a spin-off or spin-out.
And there is also a big problem here about ownership. So as you can see, for example, CTT is 100% owned by the faculty. And we are now actually, when we applied for the projects and going for the projects, we are a big company. So then you need to go with different share, and that's something you need to prepare before entering and before starting of a spin-off company. So university or faculty cannot be owner over 50%. So 49% you need to enter. Then faculty is giving what in the spin-off and who is using that. So it's not so easy. If and people usually start spin-off and startups to apply for the projects, European national projects, and then you have this limitation. So this is something for another webinar with more detail how to start spin-off and startup. So I think but thank you very much, Domago, for your explanation, and thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good, and it was very good continuous from the first two presentations. So I think that we got everything about IP properties and intellectual properties. So thank you, Bojan.
Thanks a lot.
And our last presentation is coming from Poland. Marek, floor is yours.
Thank you. I can now. Where is our presentation? Okay. Okay. Now, is it full screen?
Yes, it's full screen. Yeah.
It's working. Okay. Good morning. My presentation. What happened? Next slide. Oh, it's going. I prepare a presentation about research and development on zero-emission ships solutions and information about sources of financing with some practical information and some examples of the projects. This is general information about our activity. And Baltic Sea and Space Cluster are interested in different areas, and we are focused for transfer knowledge between different part of maritime industry and with space technology. Then we transfer knowledge between all these areas of activity in space and in maritime industry. Here you see our members, including universities, technical universities, research institutions, and shipyards, ports, and small and medium enterprises. And on the right side, you find our partners, including members of this webinar. And information about our presentation. I inform about some support sources, and then about some examples of the innovation products, finance support, and my proposition of the finance models. this is information about our project. You received this information in first presentation by Boris. And now informations about research and development activity. And you see that research and development expenditure as a percentage of GDP was in EU about 2%, in South Korea more than 4.5%, Japan, United States, and China. In numbers, in 2018, EU spent almost about 300 billion on research and development activity. And here you have general information about research and development expenditure between 2008 and 2018. But more interesting, I think, it is its graph, and we can compare gross domestic expenditure on research and development in 10 years. And you see how it changed in different countries. And now graph about gross domestic expenditures on research and development by selection region, but you can find this information. It's interesting, I think, for us, but of course it is not complete information, because we must add this information. When we compare our compensation cost of labor inform us that the same person can in China, South Korea, Japan, United Kingdom do more work and more research for small money. And it is interesting information about potential of these countries. And next, information and research and development enterprise expenditure in 2000 and 2015, how it changed. You see, you can compare United States of America and EU, how it changed. But the next slide, you remember, it is 2015 year, and in the next slide, we have information about 2017, and the period is from 2000 to 2017. And you see that the main part of this cake is for China. And some information about research and development expenditure by sector. And you see information. It's very interesting when we compare EU and China. But it is percentage relative to GDP. But it is interesting information, the structure in percent share of total expenditure on research and development by source of funds and business and enterprise sector in China, And Japan is very active. And you see that government sector are very active in EU and United States. And now examples. It is two examples of autonomous electric small vessels supported. This project were supported by government, and the total cost one of this vessel is about 200 euro, with government support about 50%. And you see these vessels working now in port of Gdynia. Here is the Hydrodrone 1, original Polish design and production with all functions using in port activity. Here is information about project of an ecological water ferry to the waters of the city of Gdańsk. The design is by professors from Faculty of Ocean Engineering and Ship Technology in Gdańsk University of Technology. This project was supported by Gdańsk city. And next project from Gdańsk University of Technology, it is a project of the propulsion system developed by a team of scientists from the Faculty of Ocean Engineering and Ship Technology. It allows for the creation of a hybrid propulsion on inland ships up to about 30 meters long. And next information about students' activity. Students from Faculty of Ocean Engineering and Ship Technology participated in development projects, including I include here two solutions. One solution, it is built with solar batteries, participated in the Dutch Solar Challenge in the Netherlands, and the regatta in Monaco. And the second, the muscle power boat. It is students' concept, design, production, and this muscle-powered boat has won the gold medal 4 times at the International Water Bike Regatta. And next example from different side of Poland, from Warsaw, from Military University of Technology, and a small enterprise was created by a professor from this technology. The name of the company is AWAT, and here is the products which has produced, and the design is originally designed in this company, and with roots from Military University of Technology. The next example is a kinematic laser autonomous system with patent and number patent, yes, and it is this product has received co-financing of scientific and research work by private funds. And next example, by frequency fiber optic laser zero This product is co-financing of scientific and research work by the National Center for Research and Development. Next proposition of different models, financing models for zero-emission ship solutions. It is my proposition. Of course, we can change these models or create new models, but my proposition is create a triple helix, quadruple helix, pentagon helix, and hexagon helix model. In one model, in the landscape of this presentation of this slide, you have a photo from electric ship bridge from Denmark, Tycho Brahe. Triple helix model include financial support from government, small medium enterprise, and university. It's combined financing system. The next model, we can include local funds from the city, from the region, and so on. In next model, we can add finance sources from research and development institute. And the next model include different solutions. We include EU or Norway grants from these sources of finance. Then we can show this finance sources management as a collection of elements, and this collection of elements, it is information about combination of sources of finance management, different kinds of projects. And I think that we can connect this management finance system with shipbuilding flowchart. It is example of ship production management. Then we management ship production system can explain as collection some elements. Of course, in shipyard, it is open discussion. We can create design and ship production management process in different systems of elements. But when we connect these two sides of project and product and financial systems, we can create the production financing of ZEV, zero-emission vessel, in a shipyard. And in my opinion, of course, it is my proposition, we can be written as the Cartesian product of the critical resources and the process steps. Then we can combine this in these kinds of elements when you see in previous slides and in this slide. And I think that it is idea how we can connect financial ideas and financial sources with ship production process. It is on the end of my presentation information about Polish shipyards potential. We have potential in ship production about 30 new ships per year. It is 100% export for all the world, including Scandinavian countries and Canada and East. We have a potential to ship conversions about 90 per year, about 95% for export, and we have a big potential in yachts and boats production, 22,000 per year, 95% for export. And the last slide, Polish maritime cluster potential. It is in Polish condition. It is big potential with good routes and good connections with the international market. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marek. Thank you, Marek. Very good presentation to finish, to close our webinar. So we had the 3 presentations at the beginning with showing the how to protect, and here you presented actually the good ideas when it's working. So thank you very much. I have only one comment. So Barbara and Emma, could you please jump in and answer on it? So it was in our chat. So we exchanged some comments from our attendees, and you actually answered, but it will be very good to answer to all attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So actually how to ask this question. So it's not easy to patent business method. Is that correct? The question, it was correct, something like that. So business method cannot be patent, if I remember.
Yeah, the comment that we had was a very extremely valid one, in that it can be very difficult to actually patent business methods. And one of the mistakes is that people think they are patentable per se. Usually business methods or processes can only be patented if there is something underlying either a product. So in the cake example, the process was based on a tool that had been created and a process which sat alongside it. Because usually it's not very easy to get process patents unless there is, as I say, a product or a tool underlying it, or a computer. In the case of computer implemented business methods, it's not very simple to get a patent for those unless the computer, as the attendees pointed out, unless the computer is directly involved in the creation of in some sense. And there is a difficulty in patenting processes. I think I've had 12 that the company I work for, Kongsberg, had tried to put in, and the success rate was about 1 in 12, and they ended up being very, very limited. So it's perhaps when it comes to patenting processes, it's a different way of maybe protecting those processes, looking at recording it as know-how, so recording it in a process document, keeping it as internal know-how, and limiting access through non-disclosure agreements and contract, rather than going down the patent route.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Emma. It's very good explanation. So actually, the comment was very good. So I hope that now attendees understand little better what they can patent, because it's and how many people coming to you and asking is it possible to patent? So how much do you know 100 people came and one idea is good or something like that? Do you have something like that numbers?
I haven't got those numbers essentially, because what I tend to do is I work very closely with the Norwegian Patent Office, who have the expertise in those specific technology areas, and we sit down and we work with them and we do the searches with them on whether it's new, it's novel, if something else exists, what the landscape is, and whether it's patentable. But in the previous technology company I worked in, we would have maybe 90 to 100 ideas per year, and of that we went through a process where we reviewed them as to whether they were useful to the product, whether they were relevant, whether we could use them. Of that, maybe 50% went through and we tried to get a patent for them, and then of that, again, probably 20 a year were granted, or 20 a year were successful. Because even if you spend the time and you invest the time in looking at the patent landscape and whether something exists, whether it's patentable or not, you have a good idea before you put the application in. But even then, whilst they're examining it, there may come questions of things that have been disclosed previously, and you need to amend or reduce the patent scope. So it's a kind of funneling process. So I'd say that for the technology patents and the product patents that I worked with previously, about 20% ended up as patents.
Okay, this is actually very good that you explained. So a lot of people are actually asking, but only, let's say, 20% are managed to go with the whole process, how to say, more or less. It's depending on the level of patent development, and but nowadays, So Emma, thank you. I think that we answered on all questions. I don't see any additional question. So I like to thank you all, our presenters, for a very good presentation. I receiving the comments from the attendees that presentation are very good and topic is very good. All presentation will be online, so when I receive from our panelist presentation, I will send email to all attendees, and you will have opportunity and possibility to download the presentation, and the webinar will be uploaded on YouTube, so you can watch and see is there any something interesting for you. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact us. There is one more question. I would like to know, is it possible to patent a methodology for protecting the orchid from frost? We are developing our FPS frost protection system.
Yeah, obviously the first thing you'd need to do is I would recommend contacting your local patent office or a patent expert and trying to understand what the process is, what steps there are, what technology is involved, and then looking at doing a search with the patent office or the patent expert to see what is already out there, what is known technology, whether this is something that is patentable. So that those are the first steps I would take. It could be possible, but you won't know that until you do the searches and you set out what the process is.
Yeah, he's actually asking here methodology for. So is it possible to patent methodology or protect it?
It can be very difficult to do. Again, you would have to show that the methodology is capable of being utilised. Yeah, it's something that I would explore with the patent office in your local area or an expert.
Okay, okay. So I understand. I understand. So thank you all. I think that we answered now the questions. But as I said, if you have any question, please send email to us, and we will try to help you if it's something in our field and if we can help you. So I'd like to thank you all, and see you next time on the new future webinars, and goodbye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.